Good afternoon, it's Lisa Jane here from One Community in Eastleigh, and today I'm speaking to Emma Gott, who is the Project Development Manager for CRY UK. Thank you very much for coming along today,
Thank you for having me.
Now, CRY stands for Care and Relief for the Young. Your head office is based here locally in Hedge End, but your work is international, across 30 nations. So tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having us. So we started 30 years ago in Hedge End as a charity, and we're now operating in 30 nations all around the world, mostly in the global south. And our heart and our vision as a charity is to see children break the cycle of poverty for themselves. And the way we do that is by partnering with local and existing projects all around the world, people that have already started a project towards supporting children within their respective communities. And our heart and our vision as a charity is to come alongside them and to support these projects, as I said, in 30 countries now all around the world.
Gosh, it's really huge, isn't it? So what is the history of CRY and sort of how and where did it begin?
Yeah, so it started 30 years ago, as I said, with our founder, Martin Dunsford, who traveled to Romania straight after the end of the Ceausescu era. And at that time, Romania found itself in a very terrible situation, especially children. Many children in Bucharest were either orphans or they were street children, and they were living in terrible conditions across the capital. And Martin Dunsford was present after a visit, whilst on a visit, and he just started to feel compassion for these children, and he felt prompted upon his return to the UK to start a charity that was going to initially support these children in Romania. So the way it started is the first ever project that CRY did was to actually set up an orphanage called Casa Robin Hood, which was in Bucharest, and was supporting orphans and children living in the streets. So that's how it all started. Okay. And then from Romania, as I mentioned earlier, the work of CRY has evolved. And as I said, now we're in 30 nations across every single continent on the planet.
Wow. I mean, I do remember back then, television sort of clips about these little children in orphanages and in a very, very sorry state. And I think it appealed to a lot of people and made people aware that it was, children were suffering in other countries, and we needed to do more outside of our own country. Yeah. So what is your background, Emma, and how did you get involved with CRY?
So I'm assuming by now yourself or the listeners can tell that I am not from around here. So I'm French. I've been in the UK for over 10 years now. And my background in the UK actually is a football background. I worked for the charitable football industry, if we can call it like this. I was involved with the Saints Foundation for 4 years, and then my wife, after graduating from Southampton University as a doctor, was relocated to work in Manchester, and then for another 4 years I was lucky enough, depending who you ask, I guess, to work for...
it's a delicate question, isn't it, depending on what team you support.
Exactly. I was working then for Manchester United Foundation for 4 years. And to cut a long story short, during COVID, I guess like many people, it was a time of reflection, and I was wondering what is it that I want to do in the next phase in my personal professional journey. And since as long as I can remember, I've always had a heart to want to work in developing international development, especially towards children that are vulnerable because of the background they come from. And long story short, as I said, I was given an opportunity to work for CRY, and because of that I decided to move back to the south, where I've been now for working for CRY for 2 years.
Okay. Well, I mean, you have, and something we just talked about, you've got children of your own now, so
that's right.
To have empathy for children, as most of us do, but to have your own, it suddenly really becomes so important to you, doesn't it, to sort of see what needs children have.
It does, and it's interesting. I think I've always, even on a voluntary basis, tried to be involved with children's charity. But since I've become a father, my approach to our beneficiaries has completely changed. I mean, I think I have increased compassion, increased sense of urgency in terms of the need that needs to be met, because I can't help thinking, what if these children
This was mine.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. I think probably every parent, we can put ourselves in that situation. And the thought of, how well protected our children are really, and privileged for the most part in this country, to think that there's other children out there that don't have the same opportunities or safety. Yeah. So from quite a small organisation then, but, huge idea, you've now grown into this charity that works within 30 nations. So, right, this is a big question. It might take you a while to answer it. What do you do as a charity, and what is your aim?
Yeah. So our aim is very simple. As I said earlier, we want to break the cycle of poverty for children. We want to do anything that we can that we help a child in the global south break out from poverty. And what we tend to see is that when a child breaks out from poverty, often that will also enable their wider family, if they're lucky enough to have a family, to be able to also break out from poverty. And in some cases, it will also help the whole community. So we think that if we can start with one child and we can help them break the cycle of poverty, that can have an impact not only on their direct families or family, but also on the wider community. So that is our aim. That is in whatever it takes, as long as we can.
That's the essence. Absolutely.
And the way we do that is by partnering, as I said, with local existing projects that support vulnerable children in the global south. So this could be an orphanage, this could be a school, this could be a children's center in the heart of a slum, this could be a baby unit a baby medical unit, like a hospital, anything that will help children. Because as a charity, it's clear and it's important to remind the listeners that what we do is all for children. Hence why we are called Care and Relief for the Young.
For the young, yeah. Absolutely. And so, you try and meet the needs of very vulnerable, marginalised children throughout the world. So, you have a lot of projects, haven't you, as a organisation? So, and you really do reach into, I had a look at the list. You really are everywhere, aren't you? Yeah. So, how do you, manage all these projects?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Obviously, we cannot meet all the needs of all the children around the world. So our philosophy is, if we can help one, then that's a good starting point. But in terms of where we operate or who we partner with, what we tend to do is two things. Is first of all, where is the most urgent? Which children right now in the world are suffering the most? And if when we have identified that, which is all backed up by research and data and different reports that we read and get from different government and different organizations, we then identify nations where we want to work in, we want to support these children. And then the other thing that we do is our DNA is all based on relationship, meaning that we wouldn't necessarily work with a project or with leaders on the ground that we don't know. So the way we identify is, do we have connection in that country? Do we know someone that has a connection in that country and that trusts perhaps this project and can vouch for them? And is there a huge need in that country? And if so, then we start conversation, and we talk to the partners on the ground and see what is it that we can do as a charity to support you.
You've got some very important, you've got sort of 5 key aims, don't you, that I was reading about: education, empowering girls, support refugees, to provide aid, and improve mental health. That's a huge task in many different countries. So you obviously work with other organisations to achieve this. And despite what's going on in the news and what we sort of know about, how do you connect with these different organisations in these different countries? Do they reach out to you, or how do you find out?
So usually, as I said, because we've been networking for 30 years as a charity, what tends to happen is, especially in the global south, people just talk, people just get to meet one another in certain conferences and circles. And long story short, before we know it, we have a whole network of people that work in a similar industry as ours, which is helping children and work within a charity setting. And so often what we will do is we will often reach out to these people, or these people will come and reach out to us. And the starting point is, do we know each other? Do we trust each other? And the way we work is we fully trust local leaders to do their work. They know the culture, they know the language, they know the needs in their own communities. As a Frenchman, I cannot pretend that I know what's going on in Afghanistan and even how to operate in such a setting, especially right now. But we trust and know people in Afghanistan right now that can operate within that framework. And so what we tend to do is we are in constant conversations with them. Afghanistan is a bad example because right now we can't visit.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation.
In most cases, we will go and visit the projects. We will organize training opportunities for the leaders. We tend to just have that genuine friendship with them, and that is our starting point as a charity, and that's how we start partnering with people on the ground.
And one thing I noticed, I mean, obviously, if you're somebody who listens to the news, we know all the kind of the buzzwords. You know, obviously, we know what's going on in Ukraine. Afghanistan was a lot in the news last year, but there's so many other countries that people forget about. You know, we're about to probably have a huge crisis on our hands with Libya, aren't we?
Yeah,
what's just happened there. And so, unless somebody's looking at the news and reading it, knowing, you don't necessarily know about all the different pockets of humanity that are really struggling. You know, and the children out there that are really have tough times. But I mean, you guys within those areas, you work with schools to help build classrooms, you know, provide books, things that we all take for granted here. But, you know, in particular, which you've first got in contact with me about, you've got this campaign, Education is Power, Back to School 23. So tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, one of the key strategies that we believe in at CRY in terms of, in order to see the poverty broken in the lives of children is education. If a child can access education, if a child can go to school and pursue further education, we believe that will give them a much higher chance to obviously succeed in their lives. The problem is, in many countries around the world, especially again in the global south, school is not free. So if you are from the poorest of the poor, forgive me the expression, and your parents don't have any money to send you to school, then you will never have access or a chance to break out from poverty. And this is where CRY wants to come in, and we want to provide opportunities for these children that have no access to education to go to school, to access education. So we buy books, we pay for the salaries of some of the teachers if it's needed. We work alongside the families to provide food so that perhaps the child don't have to go and beg for food elsewhere in the city center and therefore can go to school. We will do whatever it takes in order to send a kid back to school. And this is what this campaign is all about. You know, we've been, obviously in the last few weeks, it's been the back to school kind of season in the UK. And it's amazing to see the excitement, but also, you know, many children are anxious about going back to school, but others are excited. They're going to meet their friends. They're going to, you know, even if kids say they don't like school, ultimately, I believe deep down they know that this is the best for them. Yeah. And then again, as we were talking earlier, as a father, I'm thinking, there is millions of children that don't have that privilege, that don't have that access to education. And so as a charity, we have compassion upon these children that can't go to school, and we want to try our best to make sure that as many children as possible in the world can go to school. And we appreciate we can't do everything everywhere, but we will try to do and help them as much as possible. And this is what this campaign is all about. It's about raising awareness and raising much needed funds in order to send these kids back to school, as it were.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm a bit older than you, but, you know, I do remember being put under pressure as a child and said, you know, well, poor children who don't have enough to eat and who don't go to school, and you don't appreciate it as a child, but it is something I say to my children, you know, when they complain about school, they're in a safe place, they're learning, and actually children are sponges and they do want to learn, despite what they tell you about not wanting to learn. They do want to learn. So another thing that's really important that you do is, you know, you have to look at girls separately as well and see that they're very much overlooked in a lot of countries and nations, and they're not given the same opportunity as boys. So this is something you also concentrate on, isn't it? To sort of protect them from harm and sort of advance them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, I'm a huge fan of Khaled Hosseini, the author who wrote The Kite Runner, the Afghan author. And one of the quotes that he said, which always kind of stayed with me, was a society that doesn't have women empowered or educated is a society that cannot move forward. And at CRY, we believe that 100%. And we've seen it with our own eyes. And I travel all around the world, and I see it when there is societies and countries where women are not valued, empowered, or educated. These societies are really struggling to go forward, and therefore the poverty cycle is going around and around and around. And going back to our mission statement, which is to break the cycle of poverty, we realize that there is a crucial need for this society to have women involved in roles that will help them shape their whole community and their whole society into a better world, as it were. So we are having we are doing a lot of different projects in order to help women in Afghanistan, which is really controversial, but we are able to operate within a framework which is very strict, that is given to the Taliban, by the Taliban to our project partners. But we will try everything we can in the countries where women are the most oppressed to try to release them as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing, because I think while, of course, it's important as a charity to view children as young people who need help, vulnerable children, I think it's also important to know that girls are treated differently,
That's
you know,
right, yes.
and in this day and age, it's something that's got to be looked at, that, you know, they do need the same opportunities as boys. And so the other thing you do, which, you know, is amazing, you provide aid to some of the most vulnerable groups around the world. How do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you provide aid?
Yeah, I mean, again, often when people ask us, they say, well, providing aid, what good does it do in the long term of a child? Well, a kid that doesn't have an empty stomach cannot go to school, cannot concentrate in a classroom. A kid that doesn't have the appropriate clothing in many countries won't access school either. So actually providing aid, we see that as a crucial part in everything that we do. If a child wants to break the cycle of poverty, wants to improve its mental health, wants to succeed in its education, that child needs its basic needs met. And that is often coming in the form of providing aid. So the way we do that is, again, by partnering with local agencies in some of the most in-need countries all around the world. And with them, we provide and buy everything that a child would need, from nappies to milk for the newborn, to food, clothing, books, blankets, tents, anything that they need in order to hopefully live with a bit more dignity and be in a place where they can be strong enough as a child to break the cycle of poverty for themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, you also try and improve the mental health of children affected by trauma. I mean, this must be quite a big thing to do, because a lot of these children have just been born into trauma, haven't they?
It's absolutely huge, and it's one of our biggest challenge. And the way we try to approach this challenge is by partnering and employing practitioners that are expert in the field of helping children that have gone through trauma. So we employ social workers, children psychologists, mental health practitioners all around the world, people that have been trained, people that know what they're talking about, and they are the ones who are going to the houses where the children live, to the slums, to the orphanages, and they are the ones who help these children overcome some of the trauma that they have faced because of reasons you just mentioned. So it's a huge challenge, and I think in light of what's happened recently, perhaps more than ever, it's needed with the earthquakes and the war that is happening across the world. Children are facing huge mental health needs and issues, and we want to try to respond as much as possible to that need.
And I think a lot of things that people forget, which is so simple, without quoting Whitney Houston's song, is, these are the people who are going to grow up and look and be the world leaders and the people who are working and running our world. So we need to look after them, don't we?
Right.
We can't be so short-sighted that it's just about the here and now and the adults.
That's right.
So do you receive a lot of requests for help in areas around the world? So how does somebody sort of get in contact with you, or is it something that you're also researching yourself to do?
No, so of course, as a charity based in the UK, we welcome volunteers. We want to partner with people. We want to, so we talk to businesses, we talk to local schools, we do old school assemblies where, as a matter of fact, one of the school not far from here has chosen Cry as one of the charity that they will support this year, and so the kids would put together a bake sale, and they would do like a non-uniform day, and all the profit will go towards the work of Cry. So we want to work with anyone that is sharing the same values as us, which is to help children in need. I have to say, we don't believe in kind of Western savior mentality. We want people to volunteer with us with humility, with an approach of humility, of genuinely wanting to help, and not trying to find. And there's nothing in it for them in terms of, we're not in there for having us, for
publicity
exactly.
and selfies with indigenous people.
That's right.
So you've so many different projects running in so many different countries, and it must be incredibly busy keeping up with all of these projects. And so, how big is the team here at Cry?
So the staff team, in terms of the head offices, is only 6 people.
Oh wow!
So it's very small.
So you're all very busy people.
So we are busy people, and this is actually my role along with my colleague. We oversee all the partnerships from around the world, and so it does keep us very busy. But we also work with third-party agencies that help us maintain these relationships in some of the projects that we work with around the world. So it is keeping us busy. I myself travel quite a bit myself to visit the projects. Obviously, I have to balance my personal and family life with traveling. But so far, we are at full capacity, I would say, but it's manageable on the basis that we also work with volunteers that take time to help people on the ground or over Zoom or whatever it might be.
So, I mean, even with your experience, Emma, do you still feel shocked when you go somewhere and see things that, you know, we don't really have to deal with here?
In fact, more than ever. More I go, more I'm shocked, and more I realize, and I'm not trying to be cliche here, but more I realize how privileged we are here. I've been privileged to travel all around the world before CRY and with CRY. And some of the things you see, I just can't believe I see that when it's 2023. You'd think that's something that should have happened, should have never happened, and if it did happen, it would happen in the Middle Age, not now in 2023. Yeah. So I am indeed shocked, but actually that fuels my compassion. It fuels my motivation to go the extra mile in order to try to help these children as much as possible.
It's a total motivator. So even though your HQ is here in the UK, and we're going to bring it back to Eastleigh for a minute, there's you've a lot of people helping around the globe, but you also have people locally working here for you. So I mean, I also read that you somebody could use their gap year to go and sort of volunteer and be away. Now, you are a Christian charity, so would somebody have to be involved in the sort of Christian community to do that, or is that a big part of the ethos of what you do?
No, our ethos is Christian, and we in the way we operate and our compassion around the world, we would argue as a Christian charity that it stems from what we would say is God's love for these people. But anybody can work with us, anybody can volunteer with us. As a matter of fact, we have got 11 charity shops across the Solent, and many of our volunteers and staff wouldn't share the same faith as I do, for example. So you don't have to be sharing the same ethos.
It's the same values, really.
Same values. Yeah. And we're just honest. We say people, know that this is in the background. We are a Christian-based charity, but many of our beneficiaries actually are not Christian. Most of them will actually be from other faith, but that doesn't impact us. What we want to do is just help regardless of the nationality or the religion of the children on the ground. So yeah, we welcome anyone.
And so I mean, is that quite popular, something to do for somebody for a gap year? Do you get many people approaching you for that?
we do have so it's a new project that we've just started, and one of the things we realize as a charity is we've been blessed by 3 decades of generous people in the UK that have volunteered, that have gone to some of the countries and helped build classrooms, people that have financially giving. But a lot of these amazing, generous generation, many of them have either passed away or will pass away and die in maybe 10, 15, 20 years. So we're thinking, who is it going to be that next generation of charitable minded workers that we need to engage with? And most of them are probably right now in high school. So we want to engage them now. We want them to think that they are the change that they can see in the future, for children around the world and in the UK as well. So we do provide this gap year opportunity for anyone that wants to explore what it looks like to work in a context where you would fight for social justice on behalf of children. And in our context, that's in the global south. So although we're at full capacity already for 2024,
Brilliant.
If there's any applicants in 2025, we are interested.
Ready to hear from you.
Absolutely.
And I mean, your sort of your connection with the locality is, like you've just said, you've got charity shops, and so that's one of the ways that you can fundraise and that people can help. So if you were somebody who was interested in getting involved, like what would you do to work for CRY or sort of approach you?
Yeah, so if anyone, first of all, within their community have noticed a charity shop or two, because in some places we have more than one charity shop, they could come to the local charity shop and just across the counter, just asking how can they get involved, how can they volunteer. We always need more volunteers in our charity shops, but as I said, people can fundraise, people can put together some projects in their school, in their even within their businesses. People have done some kind of social enterprise challenges for their staff members in profit of CRY. So generally anything that can help CRY, we are always willing to hear. So people can either come to the charity shop or visit our website, and there is a get in touch or contact us box, and they can drop us an email, and we will make sure that we respond to these.
So how many charity shops do you have?
So we have 11 charity shops.
Oh wow, right.
That's right,
Gosh,
across the Solent.
It's quite a lot. I didn't realise you had as many as that. So, I mean, somebody could it's not, even though it sounds so international and global, which it is, obviously, there is plenty of things that people could do locally, isn't there?
100%.
To help you.
We cannot do what we do in the world if it's not for the generosity of UK-based people like you and I, just normal people that would be willing to volunteer, to give financially or whatever it might be. We cannot do what we do in 30 plus countries if it wasn't for them. So actually, the heartbeat of our charity is here in the UK, and we need people perhaps more than ever to come alongside us if they wanted to. There's obviously no pressure, but we need more than ever people to help us and join us in our mission. That's what we always say, to help children.
And this is something I hear from everybody I speak to. You know, there's this idea, I think, when a charity is a particular theme, people think, oh, I don't want to work directly with dogs, or I don't want to be on the phone. But there's often lots of jobs, isn't there, that you can do. There's often a lot more to it that you could volunteer and get involved in.
Yeah, 100%.
So just to sort of finish off, on your website it says that you're a unique organisation. So as brief as you can make it, why would you say you're unique in what you do?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say, and again, it's important to say before I give my answer, that we're not in competition with any other charity. Actually, we endorse all charities that are doing good work across the same industry and mission as ours. But I think one of the things that is becoming more and more unique for us is we really, really value and believe local leadership. And I think in the past, many charities have sent Western workers into the nations to do some of the work themselves. And we would argue that the most sustainable and powerful method is to actually empower local leaders, local workers, as I said earlier, who know the language, who know the culture, who have a heart for their own community, as opposed to bring Westerners. And I think one of the things that makes us unique is that the spotlight at CRY is always on our partners on the ground doing the work. We don't like to say we do that. Actually, we always say it's our partners who do that, and we support them. And I think that is a very important detail to mention, because we don't want to come across as a charity that thinks they know better than the people in the global south. We don't have a clue in a way, but they do, and therefore we will support them to do their work in their community. And actually, in terms of dignity, in terms of sustainability, that's a model that is so much more powerful, and we see some tangible fruits from that as well.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's so important, that it's culturally appropriate and local knowledge, rather than somebody, like you just say, going in who we think we know it all when our culture is so different. Emma, you've given me some great information. Thank you ever so much. And you've had plenty, you've flowing. You could be here for another 20 minutes and chat. Thank you ever so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
It
was a pleasure.
We'll catch up with you another time. Back to you, Kelly.
Thank you very much.